Welcome back to another edition of the Deep Cover Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Zaran. Thank you, as always, for joining me for another edition of the show. In the past few weeks, we've brought on a lot of really interesting and fascinating women voices, women in sports, and we're continuing that momentum today with a person who I've been following for a long time. If you're on Threads or Blue Sky, you probably know her as Suns Fanatics. But she's also the CEO of Game Chasers, which we're going to be talking about a lot here. It's Karrie Idstein. Karrie, thank you for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you always appreciate when somebody goes the extra mile. Karrie, who's based in Arizona, is actually traveling on vacation, I think, in Minnesota, doing a cool meetup thing. So I always appreciate when someone takes some time out of their life to chat with me and talk randomness. So want to get that out first and foremost. But one of my really big fascinations with all these guests I've been having lately, Karrie, is just kind of understanding where the love of sports came from. What was the moment that really triggered your fandom and all that? So for you, what did that journey into just becoming passionate about sports look like?
I feel like I was born into my fandom. My dad was a huge athlete in high school and some college. And when I was born, he literally was in the waiting room watching the Cubs game, So for me, it was day one. Cubs, Bears, Bulls at the time. I grew up with my dad playing ball until he was in his late 40s. So he took my sister and I all the time when we were younger to all his basketball events and would teach us how to shoot around before and after the games and that kind of thing. Sundays was always football Sunday. We gather around the TV and watch some Bears games, that kind of thing. So I've always had a passion for sports. I think it was just part of my DNA.
Well, which is great to hear. It's not always the case, right? A lot of times, like for myself, I had to I picked it up on my own. But it's interesting. I mentioned a lot of Chicago teams there, and obviously now you're in the Phoenix area, so we know you're into the Suns. But if I'm correct, if I'm wrong here, but like your Bears fandom has remained. So how did that kind of work out? It's always weird when you're relocating. I had the same experience when I relocated to Detroit. I refused to give up the Knicks, but I kind of liked watching the Tigers, as opposed to watching the Yankees or the Mets. So what was that kind of like when you moved out to Arizona?
So I wasn't following the NBA, shocker, I know, for a while there. And when I had my son, who's now an adult, he was a huge Magic fan. So I kind of just went with him on his sports, as far as the NBA. So I was just kind of like an NBA fan and a player fan and not necessarily a team fan. But when I was growing up, I grew up in the MJ, Pippen, Kukoc era, where they're winning everything. And to cause some like turmoil in our household, I decided to become a Knicks fan after they won their third championship, because I'm like, okay, they're winning everything all the time. So at this point, I became a Knicks fan during the UN, Starkley Oaks, that era, and remained a Knicks fan and a Bulls fan, obviously, for quite a number of years. And then I moved overseas. And when I moved overseas, you couldn't really watch the games anymore. The time difference, and they just didn't broadcast them over there like they do now. So at that time, I just kind of fell off with sports. And when I moved back, I started watching football again with the Bears and what have you. And so I've remained a Bears fan over all these years. And one thing you'll know about Chicago fans is they're very loyal to their teams.
True.
And we don't have a lot to show for it. We don't have a lot of championships. The Bears have won one Super Bowl that all of our fans hold on to dearly. The Cubs, they've had one in the last 100 years, 110 years. So for us, we always try and remain fans and be loyal. But when I moved to Phoenix, I literally was just like, okay, I need an NBA team. Like, I love the NBA, but I don't really have a team anymore. So I'm going to just adopt the Suns, right? So they were at the time horrible, like 17 and 64 was their record that year. And I just started going to games. They were really cheap at the time. We didn't have a lot of good players, and then COVID hit, and then the bubble happened, and then the Suns exploded. So I kind of just followed that through today.
Well, I appreciate the story. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Suns later on, because I definitely want to pick your brain on the state of the team right now. I personally have a lot of thoughts about it. But before we get there, I do want to talk to you about your company, Game Chasers. And on your website, you say it's the ultimate fan experience. And, I've followed your posts about it, and just kind of this kind of concierge service around live sporting events and other types of events. So walk me through what it was like when you were setting this up. What was the vision? What did you see an opportunity for, that there was an avenue for something like this to succeed?
Phoenix is a top 10 sporting event destination in the United States. Because of our gorgeous weather, and we house sporting events from NASCAR to the PGA tours. We have the Cactus League spring training. We have NBA, WNBA. At the time, we had hockey as well. That just moved to Utah, but we have the Cardinals. So we have every sporting event outlet. Plus, we have some major colleges in the area, like ASU or U of A. We have Northern Arizona University. So a lot of that has made available sporting events like anytime, any season, all year round. So it really was kind of like a no-brainer for me, as far as that's the field I wanted to be in. I have since changed like the structure of the business and how I wanted to go about doing it. At first, it was like a party bus for all these sports, like all the events. And then as I started getting into the startup costs and the maintenance and like just how the routes would be run and that kind of thing, I realized that's not what I was passionate about. So I changed it to more of a concierge service, where I obtain your tickets, I set up your hotel, any kind of transportation. I set up nightlife, any kind of tours, desert tours like ATV, horseback riding, brewery tours, anything like that. So I'm kind of like your one-stop shop in Arizona when you come to visit during your sporting league event.
That's super interesting. Yeah, it's super interesting because, like, a lot of people would say, well, what do I need that for, right? Like, I have all these apps and I could book all this stuff, but then you really start to plan it out in between, not just the tickets, but if you're renting a car or something, parking and stuff like that, and then the different activities around the area, it turns into like this burdensome thing. So the vibe then is just like, hey, let me take care of that annoying stuff for you, right? And then you just enjoy your game. And I did notice recently that you've also kind of expanded even more now. You recently are setting up a package with the Indoor Football League, the IFL, with their Arizona Rattlers franchise, which again is really cool for that medium. Just, I think I commented on this on your Blue Sky post, where, as somebody who covers arena football for the different league, AF1, that sort of like premium experience is what those leagues need, because they're kind of not looked at in that way. So if you can, what can you share about like what it's like to negotiate that sort of a partnership? What goes into that?
So depending on the team that I'm working with, some are really strict with like, hey, we can do this, but we can't do this, or this, unless you spend thousands and thousands of dollars, right? Or we can set you up with a link, you can get your tickets, and then you set up the rest of everything else. If you want VIP experience, we could do this. And each team kind of breaks it down. With the Rattlers, it was super easy. I spoke with a rep. I told him about my business. we started brainstorming different things, and we came up with, like, I have my own link. If you click on there, you can see it's like a partnership kind of thing between me and the Rattlers. They set up after game, like, VIP type experience where you can go and like meet the players and get their autographs and take pictures on the field. In our league, if a football goes into the stands, the fans get to keep them. So sometimes they go through like 20, 30 footballs in a game. And our field is right up against the seating area, kind of like a hockey rink. So sometimes if people get tackled, they'll get flipped up into the stands too. So it's really interactive, and I'm extremely excited to bring this to people. And because we are working together on group stuff, we can make it really affordable for family and, just large outings. If you wanted to bring your coworkers, or team building, or just like a young kids sports team to go, it's just a lot of fun. I'm really glad I could work with them.
No, yeah, it sounds awesome, and that's one of the things I like about Arena, right? Is because you're right there in the action. In many ways, some people kind of describe it like basketball, because like if you're like on that front row, it's kind of like being courtside at a basketball game as well, similar to hockey, like you mentioned. So let's kind of dive into the full fan experience, right? That you talk about here. So like from inception, when somebody is interested, all the way to the end result, can you kind of walk me through what that looks like, what that process is for you on the back end, just to get an idea of the nuts and bolts of this whole thing?
Sure. So someone will reach out to me and say they're interested in, say, attending a Diamondbacks game. They're here, but they're not here for the Diamondbacks. They're here for the Cubs. So I talk to them about their budget. I do a consultation. I have a bunch of questions on how many people are going to be there, the dates they want to go to the game. Do they want any VIP experiences, such as the lounges? Do they want buffet? Do they want in-seat, like drink service, that kind of thing? Then we discuss like the tickets. If they need a hotel or private transportation, I have several private transportation companies that will pick them up and, bring them, drop them off, and take them anywhere they need to afterwards. If they want to have an after party after the game, I set up nightlife, like reserved table, bottle service, trips to the casino, or like if it's a bachelor party, we can do adult club type thing. But I field all this information in our consultation, and then I work directly with the client to get the experience they're looking for. And it's so customizable. They can add team swag if they want. They can have different welcome packages in their hotel room waiting for them when they get there. They can, if they have private transportation, we can add drinks, so they can pregame before the event. So it's all very customizable. It depends on the client and what they're looking for. So I write up an itinerary. They do have to pay a deposit to cover the tickets, because the tickets can, like, I could be talking to you and the tickets you're looking at are gone in 5 minutes. So right. I have to be able to purchase the tickets for them right away. And in this business, if you don't take a deposit or something in the beginning, then sometimes you get stuck with the tickets and then they opt out, right? So that's how that would work on a deposit. And then going forward, we just customize the whole experience, whatever they want to do. If they're staying 3 or 4 days and they decide they want like a golf trip, I can set up their tee times and rent their golf carts and set them up with like dinner at a steakhouse or what have you. So
in terms of the communication, is this thing where once they when everything's all booked and the events start to happen, are you like in constant communication with them just to make sure everything's good? Like, do they just reach out to you? Like, what does that look like?
Depends on the client. Some of the clients, like, once they're here, I'll just reach out and be like, okay, did everything go okay? Was check-in okay? How was your flight? Like, just reach out if you need anything while you're here. Call me. You have my direct phone number. I also will answer texts or what have you. So they have a direct line to me. Sometimes they don't want to be bothered at all. They just expect everything to go as planned. And if they want to reach out, they will. Some people are communicative the whole time. So they're like, oh, we just got into the Footprint Center. It is so fun here. And they want to share their experience with you, right, through text or what have you. So I'm open to all of it. I love creating a really fun sporting atmosphere for people and allow them to like generate lifetime memories from all of this. So if they want me to be a part of it, 100% will be a part of it.
Yeah, don't twist my arm, right? But
Yeah.
so kind of one thing I've always appreciated about you is your candor when you talk about struggles that come with starting something from the ground up, right? And running a business is not easy, especially now these days. There's so many more challenges. So what sort of challenges have you had to face while getting this thing up and running and trying to drive it into the next level?
I think my biggest challenge has been marketing, to be honest. I am not a marketing person. Yes, I have 10 social media accounts and I blast everything on there, as you've seen. I have a website that I just got rebuilt. And for me, because this is a nationwide service of people flying out of their home areas into Phoenix as a destination, it's really been a challenge for me to market throughout the United States on a limited budget, right? So I'm bootstrapping this whole business. So I don't have loans, I don't have investors, that's been a challenge. So like everything I'm doing is my savings, you know what I mean? So, and as money comes in through the business, it's immediately reinvested into the business. So for me, the marketing thing is an issue, which, I'm working out as much as I can. I go to probably about 15 networking events a month. And then I do podcasts like with you, and I'm, on social media interacting with everybody as much as I can. So I guess that's my biggest challenge, because I don't have high startup costs and I don't physically have to be somewhere or have like a storefront or something like that. Everything else has kind of come pretty easy.
That's the thing too, that when you said you take everything that comes in and reinvest in the business. It's ironic you say that, because a person who said that exact line verbatim is Phil Knight, the guy who set up Nike. And that's what he was doing back in the 70s with Nike. I just read his memoir, so I think that's why that was on my mind. But yeah, it's marketing is so hard these days too, because especially like you said, how do you really tap into that? It's not like you could really focus in on the local Phoenix area. People who already live here or live there probably don't, need that, wouldn't be your target per se. And yeah, I really do admire the just the hustle mentality, I guess is the best way to put it, where, you're doing these events and you're just kind of really invested and emotionally and financially into this idea, and just trying to make that happen. One of the things that's been a common thread that with all the guests that I've had recently is the challenges of being a woman in a sports centered space. And that could be in creating content, that could be just in general fandom. For you, as somebody who's running a sports themed business, has that presented any challenges to you where the people aren't taking you as seriously, or are there roadblocks that come with that because they look at a woman in sports, and some people who are of a closed-minded nature just don't see the vision?
I feel like I've always had people challenge me when I discuss sports. I feel like people are actually pretty shocked when I can have a discussion about pretty much any major league sport and know what I'm talking about. Obviously, some teams I'm more passionate about than others, but I have like a really good general understanding about all sports. And so I get the question a lot, like, who came up with this idea? And like, why are you the one heading it up? Like when we have a round table discussion or something like that. And I'll be like, well, I thought it up in my own little brain. I'm a I'm a huge sports fan. Like, I just want to bring an excellent experience to everybody where they can just show up and have a great time. They don't have to worry about all the stress it takes to arrange all of that, especially if you're coming with a group of people or what have you. And so then they kind of like adjust a little bit and they'll start asking me more questions, and then we'll get on topics about, well, what do you think about the season this year, or what do you think about this, or do you think Kyler Murray is going to stay with the Cardinals, or all this, and I can actually speak to that. So I think it's a pleasant surprise on a lot of people's when I talk to a lot of people, I don't think it's on their radar. So I feel that helps me, and people feel more comfortable booking sporting events through me if they know that I'm actually understand the events and I'm not just like a destination planner that's like, hey, yeah, we can do this. You want to, here's your tickets, go have fun. I'm like, what do you want to see? Do you want to be there to see this team behind the team bench? Let me get you these tickets. Or do you want to watch all the action from behind the basket so you can get pictures of them dunking? Or you know what I mean? Like, I field a lot of questions because as a sports fan, I know I like specific seats when I get my tickets and different experiences for different types of games. So I feel like that really helps me out in the business that I have now.
Yeah, I feel like that's a secret sauce, right? Where it's just like somebody who's actually invested in it and invested in the teams, invested in the experience more so than just, like you said, a destination planner. Those, I feel like that's like kind of like a dime a dozen, somebody who actually like, well, you should want to get this seat, or here's an option because XYZ reason, and I think that's a big differentiator, right? Because it's almost like sports fan planning by a sports fan is kind of the message there, which I think is a strong message. All right, we've come to the point in the conversation here where it's time to talk about the Suns. So they are really, the outside looking in, a incredibly fascinating team. And so, like, if you go back to, you mentioned the post-COVID bubble situation where they make a run to the finals, and with that team with Ayton and Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker, an exciting young team, with the exception of Paul, built organically, and I think that's what fans really love. So I guess talk about that team in specific that got to the finals. I know Mikal Bridges was one of your favorite players. You posted about it multiple times. So what was that team like for you? Like, would that run to the finals? Well, can you just kind of walk me through that experience of, how you were feeling, what the emotional ride was back then when they got to the finals against the Bucks?
It was an emotional ride because we weren't used to them winning like that. And then, like, my favorite part of all of it was the team chemistry was off the charts. When you would go to the games, they're dancing in warmups, they're all high-fiving each other, they're mentally prepping. It wasn't like a serious, okay, let's get super focused and like harsh. It was fun, and the whole crowd just would go crazy, and people would come 2 hours early to watch them interact with each other because the chemistry was just fantastic. And I feel like that was huge for the way they played together. They trusted each other on the court. They, like, the whole valley-oop thing that happened where, at the last second, Ayton gets this alley-oop right above the rim, dunks it, we win and go on, to the next round. So, like, all of that was so exciting. And that's what drew me in probably the most, was just the chemistry of the team at that time. So then we get to the finals, and of course we're playing against Giannis, and like, he's just a beast in his own right. I moved from the Wisconsin area there, so I would go to Bucks games all the time and see him play in person, and he just kept getting better and better and better. So I was always kind of nervous against the Bucks, but then we're out of the gate winning, two in a row. And then we go, we're like, man, nothing's going to stop us. And then we hit that brick wall, and it was like, okay, it's just one game. Okay, it's two now. Okay, what is going on here? And the better team ended up winning. And I felt like we were really going to build off that the next season. So the next season comes along and that's a whole new story.
Yeah, it's just like you think about the trajectory of the NBA in the past few years, how much that could have shifted if we went the other way, because then you would have this young upstart Phoenix team and they win a title, and now you think, oh, okay, they're like a top contender in the West, and they're going to continue letting these guys grow, kind of almost in a way similar to like a Golden State idea where most of the guys were homegrown and that sort of thing. And then it becomes, oh, Giannis can't win the big one. Does that accelerate a trade demand and all that? And since then, the Bucks have kind of been pretty underwhelming, since they acquired Dame Lillard and, early round exits and injuries. And does the heat rise up on the Bucks, and is Giannis somewhere else, right? So I feel like there's a lot of sliding doors that could have happened as a result of that finals. But we then get into the Matt Ishbia era. And when Ishbia took over, as somebody who was living in Detroit at the time, I was familiar with him because he owned a mortgage company that was based in Michigan.
Right.
And, guy played at Michigan State, so you thought, oh, here's a guy who gets it, right? That was like the thought. Like, here's a guy who he likes basketball, he gets it. And it's like kind of like Steve Ballmer with the Clippers. Like he watched the game, he understood it. Mark Cuban when he was with the Mavs, that sort of thing. Not just some guy who was there to collect the check. And he gets, because it's a mortgage industry, and this is how he won going up against Quicken Loans, was just aggressive. So he's like, all right, cool. Well, I'm in this sport of superstars. I'm going to get aggressive. I'm going to trade for Kevin Durant. And you think, yeah, awesome. You're trading for Kevin Durant. Cool. And then like this team slowly gets dismantled. Ayton gone, Bridges gone, Paul gone, so as they got Durant, how did your outlook change on this team? Was it kind of like, oh, great, this is the missing piece for a title? Or was it more sadness because this fun, exciting, homegrown team that we had is now gone?
Yeah. So I compare it kind of to, if you look at OKC right now, they are so much fun. They have such an amazing chemistry together. They're all young. They've kind of grown up together playing ball there. And now tear it all apart and throw in Kevin Durant. You know what I mean? It's like, for me, we had like you said, a homegrown team. We almost, we were in the finals. Like Mikal, it was my favorite player at the time. So the night that they traded him, in the middle of the night at like 1:30 a.m., I wake up to about 15, 20 text messages that Mikal's gone. And I was in instant tears, to be honest. This is where the feminine side of me in sports comes out. But I was in tears. I couldn't believe him and Cam were gone and that we had Kevin Durant. And honestly, I wasn't a big fan of Durant coming over because of how the previous seasons with the Nets were and how that unfolded. So I was kind of wishy-washy on it. And I'm like, how is this going to work? And then of course, the first night he's on injury, and then he works up a couple weeks. Like it's probably like mid-February, he starts playing again. And the first game back, he sprains his ankle again. So he's out another few weeks. So to me, it was like, hurry up and wait. Right. And it wasn't solidifying anything because we didn't have him, and now we had no Cam, we had no Mikal, and so that was a real tough time, I felt like, but we pulled it together. Durant's one of the best to ever do it, so I respect his game completely. He wanted to come here, he wanted to play with Devin Booker, and he wanted to help our team get to a championship. And I feel like Matt Ishbia really threw himself out there, spending a ton of money to bring him in. And I think everybody in the Valley at first thought, okay, we're going to win a title now. And then we didn't get very far into the playoffs, and then the season was over and they started making a ton more moves, and that changed the whole trajectory. That summer changed everything for us.
Yeah, that brings me to the Bradley Beal situation. And I always say, everybody should know their worth, but you should get somebody romantically that loves you the way that Bradley Beal loves his no trade clause. And so you get Beal from Washington. He's on this bloated contract, and I think a lot of people from the outside were kind of like, yes, we know his skill. It's undeniable. He's a bona fide scorer in the league, had been for many years at that point. But when you're so content just collecting a check on a team that sucks for so long, it makes you wonder, is this really a championship level player? And
Mhm.
so what was your kind of thought process when they're like, when Ishbia, instead of just kind of taking the medicines like, maybe I messed up here, it's just like, fuck this, I'm going all in again. Let me get this guy Bradley Beal. So what was your thoughts when they went ahead and acquired him?
So I listen to Arizona sports radio like all the time. It's on during the day, it's on in my car. Like I'm always feeding myself sports information. So I like heard the whole breaking news situation when he was, signed up and ready to come to Arizona. And I was like, oh, this could actually be really good for us.
Mhm.
At the time, but at the same time, they're taking away Chris Paul. We now have
Yeah.
no point guard. We have two shooting guards, and we have Kevin Durant, who can be flexible in pretty much any position. I call him he's like a huge utility player to me.
Mhm.
So like getting Bradley Beal, I'm like, okay, so we could interchange all of them to do whatever we need to do against the opponent. So this could be a really good idea. But the way that it's obviously played out has not been that. It's been completely opposite of that. And I feel like Beal's a really great guy. I feel like he's a great scorer. I also feel like you were saying he's on Washington, which is a team that rarely did anything. So
Mhm.
he may have looked fantastic on that team, but you put him on another team with other superstars, what is he going to look like? Right.
Yeah.
So he has played really well. His numbers are really good. The last few games when he's not injured and he's on the court, he puts up the numbers. He does
Mhm.
get some hustle in there. His defense isn't the greatest, but when he does decide to defend, he's not too bad. But it just doesn't work. The formula doesn't work for all three of them to be on the floor at the same time. And right now they are 13-4 with Bradley Beal off the floor when he doesn't play at all, and Devin Booker and Kevin Durant play together. So to me, it's kind of like that is the piece of the formula that isn't working.
Yeah, it just feels like like you said, the injuries have mounted up, and it just something is just off. There's from the outside looking at it, it looks like there's like a toxicity there, which is such a big departure from just a couple of years ago when they made it to the finals, and there it was 100% team chemistry, and
Right.
it's such a big departure. Kind of like fast forward in here into this year. Right now they're in the 10th spot, fending off the Mavs and for that last play-in spot. I guess and it feels like a foregone conclusion that Kevin Durant's going to be gone in the offseason because they weren't able to trade him at the deadline. And I guess, how are you approaching this team right now? Because they kind of feel like a zombie team in a weird way. Oh, we'll win a couple games here. Maybe we'll get in the play-in. And so like at best, you end up playing the Thunder, or
Mhm.
whoever ends up being the second
Right.
seed. Well, how are you approaching this kind of stretch run of this season?
So right now I am kind of reignited a little bit until last night's game against the Celtics.
Uh,
Like when they beat the
yeah.
Cavs and they beat the Bucks and like two of the top teams in the East, I was like, okay, we found our chemistry finally. And Brad's been out with injury, and we've got the rookies in playing and starting, and Colin Gillespie has been a really good for us, to be in that point position. And then Book, of course, he is playing on a different level, SG and point guard hybrid, and he is just able to see the floor in advance, I feel like, lately. But this roller coaster of a season, we were like 9-1 in the beginning. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be amazing, right? And then we go on these massive losing streaks, and it was just not fun as a huge fan. I've gone to way less games at the at the stadium because of it. Although I enjoy all my time like in a live sporting event situation, it just was like disheartening to see it. And then you have the coach not getting along well with some of the players, and then the whole NERC issue with Bud. So it was just kind of really off-putting to me. But in the last couple of weeks, I feel like they've kind of figured things out and they're starting to move in a better direction. And of course, like, it's for our taking on the silver platter. I mean, with the Mavs disastrous, second half of their season, there should be no reason why we aren't in the 10th or maybe even the 9th spot, but we keep beating ourselves. And so the horrible loss last night to the Celtics, that brings us back to being teetered with the Mavs again. Like, I don't even know if we're still in 10th after last night. But we were on the verge. We were a half a game out of the Kings in 9th. Mm-hmm. Where that puts us now, say we do make the play-in the 10th seed miraculously. Are we going to go anywhere from there? I mean, it's a win or die situation, right? We get put against Oklahoma. They're unstoppable. I don't see the Suns winning that. Yeah. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but I'm honest about it.
Yeah, and that's going to be the matchup, right? Because, there's no way they're climbing all the way up to 7 or 8 to be able to get that 7 seed, which would be, it's kind of a crapshoot. Could be the Lakers, could be the Rockets, could be the Grizzlies, could be the Nuggets. Could be any of those 4 teams. And it's just, I do want to touch back on one thing that you mentioned earlier because it came to me. I forgot to mention it. When you talked about getting emotional when they traded Mikal Bridges, you reminded me so much of myself when the Knicks traded Julius Randle this summer, because like objectively, the better talent is coming in, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you think about there's like emotional attachment to these players. And I think that gets discounted a lot because sports and professional sports is so transactional that you just kind of forget about when they're doing good, how good they make you feel. And you associate that with the player. And for me, it was that post-COVID season for Julius that turned me into a lifetime defender of his. So when I see Timberwolves fans kind of complaining about Julius, I get all mad because I was like, oh, they're going after my guy. They don't appreciate my guy, But that's just another thing. But flipping back to Durant, is there any way he's on this team next season, or are you guys just accepted that he's probably gone?
I think 99% of the fans believe he's going to be gone. I think the Rockets are probably the top team to take him because, one, we have draft picks that we own through them, right? So we would want our own draft picks back. And on top of it, he has history with the area, right? So like he went to college there, he has friends there. So I also think he likes all the like young athletic players that are coming in, and anytime he's there, he gets along great with the coach. Like they're really good friends. So I feel like they would be a top team to take him. The only way I see Durant staying on the team here next year is if we make it at least into the second round of the playoffs and Bradley Beal is either traded or they waive and stretch his contract. But if Beal stays, I don't see Kevin Durant staying. And I don't think it's because they don't get along or, they're fighting with each other or anything like that. It's just the dynamics don't work. And Kevin and Devin work. So if Bradley goes and Kevin likes it here, he loves the weather, he has a house here, a dog, like all these things he probably wouldn't want to give up to travel and move like any player, I'm sure. But, he is a professional player. That's amazing. And he's got a few more years left. Where does he want to spend it? Does he want to spend it in Phoenix with a team that might not ever win, a chip? Or does he want to go somewhere where that possibility is very real in the next 3 years? And he's going to be needing an extension too, because he has 1 year left on his contract. So are they willing to spend the money to extend him again? We're already in the second apron, so.
Yeah, no, not likely. And, it's, the aprons just make things so much more difficult. Houston, I agree, has been a team that I thought would make the most sense for all the reasons you stated, and for the fact it feels like they're a consolidation trade away from really contending. And they got all these young guys and stuff, and I think their future is mostly tied into Şengün and Amen Thompson, which kind of leaves Jalen Green out on the lurch. And I do wonder if he becomes a little bit more expendable if it allows them to bring in somebody like KD. That said, I don't think the Suns want Jalen Green, and because you got Devin Booker, we need Jalen Green.
Right.
And so that to me becomes a 3-team trade situation, which gets a little bit more murky. We'll see how the offseason goes. I do find the Suns to be such an interesting team that's had such an interesting history. You know, you go all the way back to Barkley and then the Nash and Amari era, and now the current Devin Booker era, I guess is the best way to call it. It's just a fascinating team that I think has been on the cusp so many times. It just hasn't been able to get over that hill. And we'll see what it looks like. But it seems like they're kind of set on rebuilding this thing around Booker completely. And we'll have to see how that all shakes out. But Karrie, I want to thank you so much for joining me. This has been a really, really awesome conversation. One, to talk about the Suns, of course, but two, to learn a little bit more about your business. And of course, I wish you all the success in the world. I love seeing what you're doing. So if you could just let everybody know where they can follow you and get in touch with you with Game Chasers and all that good stuff.
Of course. And thank you again for having me on. I've had a great conversation with you, and I appreciate you contacted me about my business and not just like about talking basketball. So Game Chasers LLC, we have a website. It's game-chasers.com. And then we have IG, which is at PHX Game Chasers. And then we also have Facebook and all of that, but you can click all those links on our website to get to our social media as well. Google has us on there, Google Business. So if you need to book anything, you can look up my phone number on there. Like everything is online. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if you're ever traveling into the Valley and want to see some sporting events, or coming here for a conference and just think it's a good team building situation, bachelor party, anything like that. I'd love to help everybody out.
Awesome. And all of that website and that link will be in the description of this episode. So if you all want to check that out, make sure to visit that link. If you enjoyed this podcast, we are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So make sure to give us a follow on there. Karrie, thanks again for joining me. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another edition of the Deep Cover Podcast. And we will see you next time.